Hi, and welcome to Your Selling Podcast. I'm your host, Nikki Kirk, aka Your Selling Guide. I'm a small town girl who took a big risk and quit a steady corporate desk job to travel the U.S. in an RV. Along the way, I started selling on Amazon, grew a 7-figure business, visited all the lower 48 states, bought a farm, and today I am still doing what I love to do, selling on Amazon while helping other sellers do it too. Each week, I will share Amazon tips and tricks and bring in guests to share their stories, expertise, and tips on the platforms that they use. Think of this as a sit down with your Amazon bestie where you can learn, ask, start, and grow your online selling business. Welcome to Your Selling Pod. Today, I'm really excited because I have 6-figure Amazon seller Mark Christiansen joining me on the podcast. Now, Mark has a little bit of a different story on how he started Amazon, and he is a married father of 2, and when he started, he had no job and 2 kids under 3. But I'm not going to tell you his story. I'm going to let him do that. So welcome, Mark, to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nikki.
So now I know that you have been selling, you're coming up on 2 years, and I'm interested to hear more because how you got into Amazon is kind of non-traditional way, or not the way I guess most people probably do it. So how did you get to Amazon selling, and what was your life like before that?
Yeah, so my background, I always wanted to own my own business eventually, and so I went to college for business degree, and once I graduated, it was in 2009, so during, the recession. So there wasn't like a ton of opportunities for me. I kept my retail job and kept working retail. And eventually I got my first corporate job, and I thought that, this is going to be amazing, and ended up hating it worse than retail. Cause just, being stuck in one spot all day, it was just draining me. So my wife and I, we kind of tinkered around with possibly like living overseas or something crazy like that. And we actually ended up moving to Hawaii and lived there for about 5 years. And my son was born there, which brought us back home because, all of our family's here in Wisconsin. And then basically same thing happened. I ended up getting a job at like the best corporate job you could get in my area. Hated it, but stuck around with it because my daughter was, coming up, so we needed insurance and everything. And long story short, COVID happened. I started getting super burned out. My work like 10x'd in busyness. Got burnt out. My wife started doing Instacart. And she was like, hey, I'm, doing okay doing Instacart, DoorDash, because during COVID, that stuff was crazy busy. So we kind of made a plan where I would quit, kind of do Instacart and DoorDash and gig work, kind of float until I find my next job. Well, 5 months later, which I didn't think it would happen that long, I ended up seeing someone selling on Amazon on TikTok. And I'm like, what is this? This seems kind of cool. And that was kind of it. Then found some of your content on YouTube, which is kind of funny being here. But then that helped me and showed me like, hey, this is something I could really do. And that's kind of where I started.
So that is such a climate change. So you lived in Hawaii and then you moved back to Wisconsin. That's got to be like a shocker.
It was tough. Yeah, it was pretty tough. But you do it for family. We had a little kid. We lasted about a year, and then we were like, we need some help. So
now, so when you started Amazon, you had your other job, or you had just quit and you were like all in on Amazon?
Yeah, so I did it the way I don't really recommend doing it. I was all in on Amazon. I did a little bit of gig work in between, like Instacart but I wouldn't recommend doing it. I jumped in feet first. I felt like I knew what I was doing after watching like a month or 2 of YouTube, and it's not even close. So I wouldn't recommend. I'd recommend starting out slow and kind of getting your feet wet and then building it up. But I kind of jumped in, and I did FBM for like the first year, which I know a lot of people don't really do that. So I kind of started a different way, but it kind of worked out.
I'm the same way. I just didn't know. I had already quit my job. I did not know about Amazon. I quit my job and said, "Oh, I'll figure out something to do while I'm living in an RV." And then I found Amazon, but I'm always like, "Don't do this." Like if you have a job, keep your job and do this on the side. It's funny that we started the similar ways.
Yep. It's a struggle those early days, yeah. Especially the payout, like you think it's going to come quick and oh no.
When you started, did you have a set amount that you were going to start with, or what did you start with capital wise?
Yeah, so I had about $2,000 in the bank and I started with that, but one thing I did too, which is another thing I don't recommend, is we had a 0% credit card to kind of help float us through, jobs, because I thought I was going to get another job right away. So I started using that heavily because it was backpack season when I started. And, I was selling 30, 40 backpacks, every couple of days. They were just going crazy. So I kind of over leveraged too hard in the beginning, which I definitely wouldn't recommend that. And ended up when the balance was due that I actually had to do a transfer balance because I was like, oh, I didn't get enough back, which, I'll be having paid off here soon, but that's why you got to go slow, like start slow, don't quit right away if you don't have to. And yeah, just ease into it.
That's so funny. Yeah, I started with, what did I start with? 500, and then I quickly put more in because like you said, you quickly realize that like, oh wait, it's not coming back nearly as fast as I thought, but you see that it's working, and so you want to like keep putting more inventory in to kind of help that snowball.
Yep, absolutely.
So we're coming up on 2 years. I think we're like a month or two out from 2 years for you from selling. At what point did you start to pull out a profit? Or I guess what point did you make a profit, but then when did you decide to pull it out, or have you?
Yeah, so like I didn't really see my first profit. It was kind of similar to you, like almost 4 months in, because I was, buying just a ton of backpacks and I kept reinvesting like everything because, June, July, those backpacks were nuts, just going crazy. So, but once that slowed down a bit, so then I was able to kind of take a bit off and, have that go towards other bills and mortgage and stuff. But yeah, that was probably a good 4 months into actually selling. So it took a while.
There's nothing quite like that sound of a new order coming through on your Amazon account. But do you know how much you're actually making on those orders? Your Selling Podcast is excited to partner with Sellerboard. Sellerboard is an accurate profit analytics for Amazon sellers as well as eBay. With just a quick login to the app or your dashboard on a desktop, you can see what your true numbers are for all of your Amazon orders by the day, week, or month. I love to use it to forecast out how I'm going to do that month and use it for my planning. Sellerboard doesn't just tell you your profit, though. They actually do so much more. So if you're creating a private label listing or you're making your own bundles, you can use Sellerboard to get reviews for your product pages. Sellerboard is a robust profit analytics tool, and I use it every day in my Amazon business. You can try Sellerboard yourself, connect it to your Amazon or eBay accounts, and see how it works for you. Get 2 months free by going to yoursellingguide.com/sellerboardprofit. Again, that's yoursellingguide.com/sellerboardprofit. Try Sellerboard today and get the true profit picture of how your business is doing. So now I know you started with retail arbitrage, or RA as we call it, but you've since moved more into OA. How's that been?
Yeah, so started with RA, doing FBM again for like the first year. And oddly enough, I didn't even go to my first Walmart or Target until like 3 to 4 months into sell. I was literally just going to Ross or TJ Maxx and Marshalls and things like that. But eventually I kind of got sick of, because my kids at the time, and even now, when I started Amazon, they were both under 2. So when I went to do RA, it was kind of like, I was gone for hours and would come home and then, load up the living room or the bedroom with just stuff. And so I always had in the back of my mind, I wanted to do, a little bit of OA or eventually maybe full-time OA. And then eventually, I kind of made the switch during this past Christmas. It was like OA, but not. I was just doing a ton of buying online and then I'd go pick up at the store because I'd find a hot item and then just kind of buy it online, pick it up. So it was kind of cool because in probably end of November, I stopped going into stores actually, and I was able to do, a lot better than I did the year before. Because that was one of my pet peeves. I always hated going during you liked it because you could find tons of stuff, but like the aisles were, 10x like people wise, where you could be the only one in the aisle, and then during Christmas time, there's, like 15 people. All it's like So I was happy I was able to kind of transfer to that, and yeah, now doing OA solely, it's different than RA. There's a lot of different things to do. It's like a different animal in a way. Like I'm just doing a ton of tests. It takes a little longer for you to get your money back too, which, cash flow is different. And I actually went to, I did a little RA yesterday because I think I'm going to try to do an even mix of the both, or at least, higher OA and a little bit of RA, just because I feel like I know so much still of RA that I can, I'm kind of leaving money sitting at these stores. But I do eventually want to pretty much be 100% OA, but that's, kind of what I'm working towards still.
Nice. So do you use softwares like Tactical, Arbitrage when you're doing OA, or are you doing more manual?
Yeah, I use TA, so Tactical Arbitrage. I use Seller Amp. I also just do manual too, where I'll just try to find what coupon or, what store is having a really good deal and just try to go through the catalog. I also just have success looking through my past purchases. So even, some of my RA purchases, I can get them online, where sometimes they weren't online. It's always cool to kind of do and find some. But it's really kind of a mix of those methods is what's been working for me so far.
Nice. That's why when people ask me, I have Tactical Arbitrage, but when people ask me how I do it, I don't really teach it necessarily because I don't do it that often, but I'm the same. I look at what I was selling or what I've sold and how can I get that online just to make my life easier. So it's definitely the model I do too.
Right. Exactly. It helps out a ton. Yeah.
So what was one of your first chase items that you were running over town or online for?
Yeah. So there was a video game steering wheel that I found back when I was using BrickSeek, which I don't use that anymore. I thought something happened where they stopped lining up with Walmart or something, but it was a Walmart video game steering wheel, and they had two at my local Walmart. I picked those up. They were on sale for $60 and were selling for it was $160 or something like that. So, luckily they sold right away. I probably shipped them wrong. I think I used a Home Depot medium box, which was way too big. But luckily none of them broke. And, yeah, I literally went to probably 6 towns in my area and just drove all the way, around and picked up all of them, and was kind of sad when they ran out. So,
what are some of the struggles that you've had? I know you've talked about a couple, but just being a business owner or selling on Amazon.
I think when I first started, I didn't, really realize that this is a legit business, that, you're basically starting your own business. If you treat it that way, that's where you're going to make, the most money if you treat it like a legit business. So, you got to learn a decent amount of accounting. You've got to, learn inventory management. There's a lot that goes into it, at least if you're going to scale. If it's simply just a side hustle where, you spend a couple $100 a month, that's pretty easily managed. But that was one thing, took me a little while to learn, even cash flow, having to learn how not to over leverage, which was something I had to learn. So that was one thing, just taking it a little more seriously, knowing it's a business and treating it like that.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm always like trying to like reiterate whenever it kind of comes up naturally. I'm not like out there preaching like I do price tanking, but I'm like, you are running a business. Like at the end of the day, you are a retailer, even though you sell on Amazon, you're a retailer. So you're going to have the customer returns. You got to like do your taxes and, do the accounting. Otherwise your taxes are going to be hard and all of that kind of stuff. And it's funny because talking to different sellers, it's like no one's forte. That like back of the house money accounting stuff is everyone's least favorite thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I dislike that too.
Is there any tools or software that you use that have made your business and life easier?
Definitely Keepa. I know everyone uses Keepa or should if you're not, if you want to take this serious. Keepa is a must-have. And like I said, Tactical Arbitrage, Seller Amp, those have been good for sourcing, but also kind of like we were talking about accounting and keeping track of everything. Inventory Lab has been, I think that's a must. Or I know there's Seller Board, which I thought I saw you switched to that or tried that out, but I just think some kind of accounting system is a must too.
Seller Board, yeah, I use Seller Board all the time. It's like one of my favorite because I use it to track my profit. I know Inventory Lab does do that, and I do have Inventory Lab for my FBA shipments, but I pretty much just use Seller Board because I like that. And I'm sure Inventory Lab does this, and I just don't know how to use it right. But I like that Seller Board has the app where I can see, like, for my FBM orders especially, because I was selling some cold medicine in January that I thought was making money, and it turned out I was making 25 cents. And I was like, well, we're not going to sell that anymore. I was able to use Seller Board to see that.
Oh, gotcha. That's the worst. I hate when that happens. When you think you have a home run and then you check, it's like, oh, something's wrong. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, those January postal rate increases were a little more than I thought because, they went up during Q4 like they always do, and then they kind of came back down, but not down as much as they were the year before. So I was like, okay, things are averaging like $5.50 to ship now instead of, $4.
No, I remember that. Yeah, because usually you could get it for about $4, sometimes under, and yeah, it was like $5.50 or something. It's like, what is happening? But yeah, the increase, that makes sense.
If you had to pick only one thing, what is the best thing about selling on Amazon and owning your own business?
Yeah, for me, that's kind of why it seemed like such a lucrative, not even money-wise, just more getting the freedom and time to do basically, whatever you want. That was just very appealing to me. With my kids, when I started, they're each under 2. And so when I was working at that, corporate job, even though I was remote, which I thought would have been amazing, because of COVID, it switched to remote. But I'd be in the bedroom and then just hearing them play, and it's just like, oh man, like I just want to go out there. And the job at the time was so like strict. You had it was like 10 minutes a day of like away from the keyboard. So it's like, oh man. So the freedom was definitely, yeah, it was crazy. But just being able to, right now take my son to school and pick him up and go to, all of the sporting events and everything, like that's huge. So that's the one thing why I, love Amazon is just the freedom. And, similar to you, how, you got to go in the RV and everything. Like my wife and I sometimes toy around with, oh, we should try doing like a sourcing trip, or like, I don't know how that would work with the kids, but just the freedom. That's definitely the number one thing.
Nice. Yeah. Does your wife still do the Instacart, or does she join you on Amazon?
So she still does Instacart, but she's been helping me with my prepping. So because I like made a goal this month where I'm like, oh, because I get to the point now where I dread prepping just like, I really need to get a prep center. And she was just like, hey, you know what? Why don't I just help you? So she's kind of like become my prep center for now, but the goal is still to try to become like fully remote. So like, I know I'm going to need a prep center eventually, but for now, she just started helping me this month, but probably next month then I'm going to like open an official prep center and see how that goes. Because do you use a prep center as well?
So I had, and it's interesting you say that because I had the same thing. I know people can do it with retail arbitrage. You would just have to like, I know one girl who lives by a prep center, so she just takes it there. But I think it was in 2018, 2019, I really was trying to move to that more online arbitrage, even messed around with wholesale, but that's another story. And I was like really moving there. I had a prep center I used out of California. A couple things I learned about prep centers is if you can find one that is in a state that does not have sales tax, then you don't have to pay sales tax on your orders. So I know Oregon for sure, but I think New Jersey doesn't have sales tax. I can't remember. But since you do online arbitrage and that's where you're moving, I mean, that's a great goal because you can do that. And then that was my goal, to be fully remote. But I've gotten to the place where I actually enjoy prepping now because I think it's like a zen for me. Like it's, robotic. I'm listening to podcasts that I enjoy. And so I just can kind of do it. But so I've gotten to the place where I like it, but that is a model that I messed around with, and it's still something in the back of my mind. I had a great experience with the prep center. There is the added cost, obviously, that you have to buffer in. I think depending on where your people are and what you want them to do, it could be like $1 to $1.50 an item. But I had no bad, experiences with it. So it's a good model to strive for sure.
Well, and that's kind of, I think I've been delaying using a prep center because I know that's going to help you with scaling and everything. But I was kind of the same way where, I didn't mind prepping because I would just open YouTube or, throw on a couple podcasts and just sit there for, whatever it takes, a couple hours or something. But I don't know. I think just eventually it got to a point where I'm just like, ugh. And the goal is to become kind of fully remote. So yeah, so we'll kind of see what happens with that.
Yeah. The one that I used, I think FBA and I don't know if it was Inspection or Spectre or something. Anyways, it's out of Fort Bragg, California, but it had a minimum. So you had to have at least 50 items to put in an order with them. But other than that, I mean, it's definitely worth testing if that's something that you want to do. That was in 2018. So that was quite a while ago that I used them. I don't even know how I probably just Googled their YouTube to find one, but yeah. And I'm a little bit of a control freak. So I was like, okay, wait a second. Like, how do I know this is going to be prepped right? And how do I know you're going to put the right labels on?
Yep. I'm the same way. That's what's been stalling me is because first, I polybag everything. Like, I probably shouldn't some stuff, and then I just get nervous. Like, other people are going to mess it up. Like, it's trying to, like, let go of that side, like, let go of control a bit. But yeah, that's one reason too for me why I've been dragging my feet is I think someone's going to mess it up or I don't know. Yeah.
Oh no. Yep, for sure. I totally relate. So do you have any advice for someone who's thinking about starting this or is newly started selling on Amazon?
I guess my advice would be, kind of everything, I've been speaking about a little bit in the sense that, treat it like a business when starting out. I know some people it might just be a side hustle, but if you want it to eventually take over your full income, treat it like a business from day one. Hopefully if you have a job, keep it until Amazon, supersedes your current income. So that way then it's, basically a replacement instead of just jumping in like I did, like you did. I don't recommend that. So I recommend going slow, even starting with stuff around your house. I'm sure there's books you could find or anything, or, go to Goodwill, try the whole book thing, the used books. I would start FBM at least, maybe not do it as long as I did because it's a lot of boxes and stuff you have to buy, but at least ship, a few items so you understand the process, and then maybe get into FBA. That's what I would recommend. And do what Nikki's did and what she says. I would start with like a couple $100, maybe $500, and then, dip maybe a little bit into your savings if you need to, but just keep compounding that, initial investment. I wouldn't start with credit cards until you know what you're doing. I would say at least 6 months, maybe to a year, and really just source every day and look at Keepa charts every day. And there's just so much information out there. I would for sure listen to podcasts, like this one, other podcasts, get involved in the community, probably open a Instagram page or Twitter or whatever, but just have a growth mindset and continue to learn. That's, there's just so much information out there. So, but those are a few of the things I would give advice to.
All of it is really good advice, because I think if you put off either FBA or FBM, whichever one, like if you just start out doing both of them, testing them out, like as your brain can comprehend it, right? Because you're learning a lot of new stuff all at once. But the more you put it off, like for me, FBM was scary because I hadn't done it. And I know people who are scared of FBA because they've only FBM'd. And so if you can kind of get to know both of it from the beginning, that's a huge hurdle that you won't have to go through down the line. And then the credit card also is a great point. I was in the whole, when I started, I was like, getting out of debt, or had gotten out of debt before we went on the road. And I was like, had my savings in that whole Dave Ramsey mindset of not using credit for anything. And so I wasn't even thinking to use a credit card until like my roommate was like, well, why aren't you? Because I was like, why I don't have any money to go buy more stuff. And he's like, well, why don't you just use a credit card? And I was like, why don't I? But because I have gotten myself in and out of credit card debt, I do know that it is a very hard thing to do. So I absolutely agree with you to not use a credit card until you figure this thing out, because you can get yourself into trouble with bad buys that you don't know are bad buys until later on down the road. So that's really good advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I felt like I knew what I was doing after just watching YouTube videos for 3 months, and it's like, no, it's not. You got to actually do it and learn from it, and yeah. So just ease up on the gas. And well, one other thing too, which I'd say don't compare yourself to other sellers too, because that can be a trap too, where you're like, oh man, this person started the same time as me and they're killing it, but they might have started with 10 grand where you're starting with $500. So you don't know the whole picture. So.
No, exactly. That's another thing that I'm always talking about, because you don't know how much time they have, how much money they have, where their stores are, where they're sourcing. Like there's just so many things you don't know, that I always look at people who are doing better than me. I mean, even in my own community, most people are doing better than me because I still and only have done this part-time. But I always look at that as goals I can achieve within my own, what I am able to do. I don't have endless hours in a day, so I can't do everything that I want to do, even though I pretend you wouldn't know it, all the things I have going on. But I pretend that I don't, but I know that I can't do XYZ because I just don't have the time to put into it. So it's a good reminder to not compare yourself to others.
Right. Yeah. It can be like motivation, but because I like what you always share too about the whole don't drop by a penny too, because I'll be honest, when I started Amazon, I kind of had the eBay mindset where it's because I did eBay before. It's oh, you always got to be the lowest seller. And I did that maybe for the first few weeks. And then once I made a few sales over that, and I kept seeing people don't ever do it, it's oh, yeah, if we just kind of stay at the same price, we'll take our turn getting the buy box and kind of go from there. But a funny thing too, I remember starting out, I still don't have a repricer. I'm literally setting up Aura now though, but I haven't even used it yet. So I've been doing all my own pricing. But in the beginning, I kept thinking, I'm like, man, people are just staying on their computer because the price would be $20 and then someone would go to $19.99 And then I'll literally check 20 minutes later and it's 1998. And I'm like, what is happening? Like that would happen with like 15 items. So I'm like, dude, people are just stuck to, and then it's like, no, they're using a reprice, which I didn't realize that. So I thought people just kept undercutting and were just living on their computer. But no, they must have set the repricer that way. So.
Yeah, I was super against repricers in the beginning because that same thing, like, it's like, how dumb is this that it just keeps going? And then you got two repricers battling each other all the way to the bottom. But then I was like, okay, so now I've heard that there are some, and I've been meaning to set one up, that are smarter and will, like, you can not do that and you can actually raise your price and it will raise your price for you. And so now I've stopped being totally against them. But I am against people who don't set them up correctly because there's no need to race to the bottom and just, like, I thought you wanted to make money. Why are you doing this? For fun? Like, I don't understand.
Well, yeah, because, yeah, if we just kept the same price, we'd all be good. And that's one thing, too, why I delayed starting my repricer is because I want to watch some, YouTube videos and learn before I just set it up. And next thing I know, I'm, one of those people where we're each undercutting by a penny, and then it something sells for a penny or something, which, yeah, I don't want that to happen. So
Exactly. Well, I want to thank you, Mark, for coming on the podcast. This was really interesting to get to know you, more about you and how you're selling on Amazon, how you started, and also your goals. So I'm excited to watch you find that prep center and set up the repricer and just follow your journey on Amazon. Where can people follow you if they want to get in touch or just follow your journey?
Yeah, so right now I'm on Instagram and Twitter as Amazon_force. I pretty much use Instagram mostly, and I use Twitter just kind of to do that like cool thing where you can tweet and then put it into your like stories. But yeah, so I'm on those platforms, and yeah, thanks for having me. This is cool, and like I said in the beginning, it's kind of fun because you were one of the people that kind of got me started on my process, so it's kind of a cool thing. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. I will make sure to link all of your socials in the show notes for anyone who wants to follow along. Thank you again for coming on the podcast.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll be back next week with another episode. Don't forget to please do me a huge favor and like and review this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And as a reminder, you can check out the video of the interview on YouTube at Your Selling Podcast. Until next week, happy sourcing.